It is a rainy Wednesday, and lights going down, so it's not as nice and bright outside, and everybody's probably getting right back into sitting in our cozy little homes. Got some great beers to talk about tonight. Hopefully got lots of questions. A couple little stories that we have. But it's been interesting week in the beer world. I think I've heard of a couple of breweries that are closing or trying to sell. Hello, Craig. Everyone's just you and me, man. Which is not necessarily a bad thing. What beer did you bring tonight? Harold, good day. Double fisting a Big Rock Trad and a Black Oak Nut Brown. After the last session I tried the Black Bellows White, and it is damn good. True, I agree. I think they've done an amazing job. The interesting thing about Black Bellows White is it's extremely difficult to accomplish that style of beer in a can. I find most people that try to put it into a can, they're not doing a very good job of it, and Black Bellows has done an amazing job, I think. Hello, Annie. Craig Foster, Scott Wellington, excellent beer, love that beer. Hello, Chantal. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting week. I think we're hearing a lot of things about the hospitality industry. I'm gonna write a piece shortly on it, but have talked to, I don't know, maybe about a half a dozen brewers in the last couple of weeks since I last saw you, and a lot of the brewers are having exceptionally good years, and it's been an interesting transition for them because a lot of brewers during the past 6 months have flipped over from being heavily dependent on the on-premise trade, so bars and restaurants, and realizing that their retail sales are going through the roof, which is good. Vessa's got an Amsterdam downtown and a Big Rock Trad. Big difference in color. Yeah, the brown is probably a lot darker, and the Trad's a little bit more on the caramel whiskey side as well, which we'll get into very, very shortly. But I'm going to make a couple of changes in the near future. I think we're going back to Thursdays. Probably still stay at 6 o'clock for the near future because I've got a few things on at 7 that I have to get to, but Thursdays seems to be a little bit easier for me, and then I can go every week with you again. Hello, Rebecca and Bry and company. That's a pretty big company over there. 2 kitties and a little boy in the oven. Brian missed all his beer today. I had a whole load of beer ready for him, and he forgot to pick it up. So ask him how that's going. Anyway, I think there's lots of positive notes out there. I think lots of people are looking forward to what the future holds and how things are going to change. I think retail has definitely changed for a lot of us. A lot of people are getting home delivery still. A lot of people are doing curbside pickup, and I think as the cold weather comes and nobody's got heaters, patios are going to drop off. So I think we're probably going to cocoon again a little bit more. So make sure you invite more people. Next week I'm going to do Bock beers, and I'm excited to do Bocks because Creemore just relaunched Urbach after a long period of time, and I had a couple of cans gifted to me recently by somebody in my level 3 class, and she works for Creemore, and I had the opportunity to sit down and try it and write my tasting notes, and I was just blown away by the complexity of the aromatics. So you can get Creemore's Urbach in liquor stores. I'm not sure whether you can get them in the beer stores, but I'm assuming that you can, so that's a good thing. The Beer Fairy played a very important role in my day this week. I had 2 deliveries, of which I was hoping for one. Hello, Charles. I haven't seen you in a long time, or heard from you in a long time. Nice smiley face. So the first one came totally unannounced. I picked something up at the Canada Post, and it was from my friends at Big Spruce. And Big Spruce is out on Cape Breton. And I met Jeremy and Melanie a few years ago. Melanie was in my full 3 flight class that went level 1, level 2, and level 3 out in Halifax. And Mel and I became pretty good friends, and she's a big fan of Prud'homme. And they posted something on Instagram about, how much you're enjoying this particular beer, and my comment back was, I could only imagine what that tastes like, because we can't get Big Spruce beer here, and it's amazing. They're an organic brewery. So Tuesday morning, I got really nice t-shirt with a Big Spruce on the front of it, and 4 Pilsners, because Mel knows that I really love Pilsners. So that was a really welcome surprise. And then later in the afternoon, got a really nice packet from Big Rock Brewery, and a whole bunch of different beers in there. I'm really excited to try their white stout. I've heard about white stouts before, but I haven't really ever tried them, so I'm kind of eager to try that. A couple of trads were in there as well, because one of my favorite people in the industry is Brad Goddard, and Brad is he's a level 3 beer sommelier as well. He is a director of I think, in relations for Big Rock. So he's dealing with the Alcohol and Gaming Commission and all the logistics that goes behind that. Brad, you would never forget Brad if you met him. He always wears bow ties. He's a really natty dresser. He's a really, really cool dude. I love listening to him tell stories. He's just a fun guy. So a few weeks ago we were chatting, and I told him that we were going to be doing brown ales, and that I was going to feature trad tonight, and he immediately said that he would send me something. So I was kind of hoping that I would get it. So the trad that I have is from Alberta. The other trads that you might have are probably brewed here in Ontario, because they have a production brewery in Etobicoke. But anyway, that's what I've got. So I've talked long enough, and I really need a beer. So I know some of you have probably already poured your beers. I'm choosing this glass. It looks like a can. I got this from Sessions Canning a little while ago. I love this glass for a lot of reasons. One is brown ales have a lot of flavor and a lot of aroma, and we want to be able to bring those out. This is also a relatively soft beer from a carbonation perspective, so I just want to experience everything that this beer has to offer for me, and then we'll get into a little bit more about what brown ales are and what their history is. One of the big things for me, one of the reasons that I love this, there are a massive amount, well, not a massive, but there's a good amount of really good brown ales in the marketplace, and you guys have them. Wellington County is an amazing brown ale. It's it's a little darker than Big Rock's trad. Same with Amsterdam's Downtown. That's a really good one as well. And then I think I've listed a few other, Black Oak Nut Brown that Harold's got. That's a really good one. And Ken Woods at Black Oak has been producing that beer probably 13 years now, and he's done an amazing job. But one of the reasons I like Big Rock Trad is a lot of people in Ontario don't get the opportunity to find this beer, and it's not hard to find. You just have to look a little bit. But every time I do business in Alberta and I get off the plane, one of the first things that I do is I go to one of my customers, and they're in the airport, and it's Belgian beer cafes are in the airport, but they also have a bistro that's on the arrivals level in Calgary. And every time I land in either Edmonton or Calgary, one of the things that I have to do is I have to have a trad. It's almost my welcoming beer to the province of Alberta, and I also know what it tastes like, and it just it's like you've just come home, and it's that kind of characteristic. So Lyndon Peter listening as well, yay! I haven't seen Lyndon Pete in a long time. Built a cottage this year from the ground up. Tore one down, built it. So let's get into what my beer is tasting like, and a little bit about what you guys are tasting and why there's differences between brown ales and porters and stouts. So A typical brown ale is going to have obviously darker colors, a little bit more brown, a lot of times chestnut brown. This particular one, the colors to me are more reddish brown and a little bit of chestnut, but hinging on the whiskey and caramel colors. So you hold it up to light, you get a really nice color. There's a slight haze to it, but that's typical of most craft beers these days. I think they're not filtering to the nth degree. Jeremy is from Big Spruce. Hello, Jeremy. Do you guys do a brown ale or a porter or a stout? I think you do stouts. I know that. In fact, I think it's called Serial Killer, if I'm not mistaken. Fantastic stout if you can ever get it. We need some Big Spruce beers here in Ontario. Jeremy's one of the largest, tallest men that I've met in a long time, and Big Spruce is probably named after Jeremy and the Big Spruce that's sitting out back of there. Maybe I'll do, in a week or two, maybe I'll feature a Big Spruce Pilsner, and we'll have a little story about Big Spruce and how Jeremy and Mel got to brewing and where they came from. But in the meantime, back to the brown ales. So on the trad, the smell for me is a lot more of the caramel, toffee, brown breads. I don't know if any of you are familiar with malt bread, but if you've ever had malt bread, it's got this little bit of sweetness to it, but it's really nice brown. It's a little lighter in touch than a pumpernickel would be, but you still get those kind of characteristics. There's definitely nuttiness in this style of beer, and whether it's Amsterdam or Wellington or Black Oak, the nuttiness tends to come through. For me on Big Rock, the nuts that I'm getting are a little bit more pecan and roasted chestnut kind of characteristics. There's also a little bit of dark fruit in there, more like dark raisins, touch of chocolate, and that dark brown sugar where you can just get a hint of the molasses. Those are the aromatics that I'm really smelling on this particular beer. And then the taste is not quite as complex. You do know a thing or two about stout. The taste on trad is not really as complex. A little bit more toffee. Again, more of that brown bread, but a little bit more on the toasted side. A touch of soy, but really good quality soy sauce. And then the one thing I was trying to remember about, what this taste was like. It's the crispy sugar top on top of a creme brulee. That's the kind of body I'm getting in this beer. It's very soft. It doesn't really have a ton of CO2, and I know that Wellingtons won't have very much CO2 in it as well, although Black Oak and Amsterdam are a little bit more highly carbonated. And so the lower CO2 is more reflective of the British style, which I'll get into in a second. It's got a moderate finish and aftertaste, so it stays around a little bit longer. But it's really smooth and it's really easy to drink, and it goes with a lot of different foods, and primarily all those fully bodied foods that you would see, meats, chocolates, obviously desserts. But let me take you back a little bit on history. So one of the things that I sort of led with that was a little teaser, it said that Mary Queen of Scots was believed to have been a big lover of brown ales. Now, that's a rumor that has been around for a long period of time, but brown ales have been around since medieval times in England. And if you think about it, it makes total sense, because back in those days, the way that they cured the grains, or they turned barley into malt, they would have had it over an open fire, because they really wouldn't have had controlled heat up until the 1700s. So when you cook over an open fire, you're going to caramelize and burn it. So it's very likely that almost all beers going back into the medieval times would have been brown ales. There's still, even if you were a fan of Game of Thrones, there's a lot of mention about brown ales, like going into the local tavern and having a brown ale. So brown ales have been around for a long period of time. So it's very, very likely that Mary Queen of Scots and beers would have been very popular, and it wouldn't have been that social hierarchy that we see with wine and beer now. People would have probably drank both things. So I would guess that Mary Queen of Scots was probably fond of beer, and probably the only beer that she was going to get at that point would have been a brown ale. So we fast forward out of medieval times and we look into more modern times, more modern brewing times, and we look into the 1700s, so mid 1700s. At this point, the roasting drum had already been invented by Daniel Wheeler, and we had already seen different kinds of heating techniques like coke being used to put a gentle heat on it. So we're now starting to see paler malts come in. But brown beers were still quite popular, and in England they had something called a mild. A mild would have been probably a very similar color to trad, more of that caramel color, and then the brown ales would have evolved from there. And so up in the northern part of England, where Newcastle is, because Newcastle is renowned for having Newcastle brown, it's a little milder than Big Rock's trad. I find it probably not as true to style as it should be in this day and age. And so in northern England, what happened is the beers got a little bit stronger. So as you're going further north, so into Scotland, into the northern part of England, into the Northlands, where it's a little bit colder, beers were a little stronger and a little darker. A little bit more nutritional, a little bit more warming. And then in the southern part of England, more towards London, the brown ales took on a lighter hue to them. So probably more in that caramel color. And then each one of these gave way eventually to porters and stouts. They lost a lot of their interest over the years, and I think a lot of brown ales pretty much disappeared from existence for quite a long time, maybe even a century or so. And then as craft brewing started back up again, we started seeing a little bit more interest in these traditional style ales. And like I said, there's a few people that are making great ones these days, and we've listed those off. So what we need to do is have a nice little cheers, and then I'll tell you a story about Big Rock. So good, so easy to drink. Big Rock was founded by Ed McNally. And Ed McNally was a lawyer in Calgary, lived in a town called Okotoks, which is just, I believe, northwest of Calgary. And in the 1980s, Ed was not a fan of the types of beers that were available to us Canadians during those times. I think he felt that they were very homogenous, in his words, probably bland. And Ed set out to change his world in Alberta. So Ed was among 4 brewers that basically led the craft beer revolution in Canada at that time. So on the west coast, we had Granville Island and Vancouver Island Brewery. Started in 1984. Big Rock started building in 1984 and produced Big Rock Trad in 1985. And in Ontario, Brick Brewing was around in 1984. So these brewers kind of led the way for all the rest of the craft brewers. And Ed was quite an interesting character, and only died recently, I believe. If Brad's on, Brad could easily pipe in and tell us a little bit. But Ed called the brewery after a geological formation in Calgary called Big Rock. It's just, again, I think on the northeast or northwest side. I'm not that familiar with it, but the name of the brewery is named after a geological formation, and the symbol of the brewery is a rooster. And Brad has a much more interesting way of talking about this, and that is that the rooster is proud. I'll get to Vessa's question in a sec. The rooster is very proud, and Ed was a very proud man as well. And you have to walk, as Brad would say, you have to walk the cock, so to speak, because that's how Ed was. Ed was really in your face. So these guys have done an amazing job. They're probably the 4th or 5th largest brewery in Canada right now. They're having an exceptional year. They've got breweries and brew pubs in Vancouver, in Calgary, and in Toronto as well. And if you can find their beers, support them. So Vessa's asking a really good question about Upper Canada Brewing. Upper Canada Brewing started in 1986 and started by Frank Heaps, whose son Cam later went with Greg Taylor and founded Steam Whistle. And Upper Canada Dark still exists. It's brewed by Sleeman. It's one of the brands that continues to live after Sleeman purchased Upper Canada. And Upper Canada Dark is a decent dark ale as well. It comes in bottles. I'm not sure if it comes in cans, but I think that you can find that in beer stores only. And I think it's actually at a pretty decent price. I think it's at a value price. So I'm just going to throw it open to you guys. See if you have any questions, any thoughts, anything you want to discuss, and then we can go a little bit further. Make sure you tell your friends that we're doing this on Thursdays from now on. At 6 p.m. and that next week we're doing Bock beers. I'll have a really good story about how Bocks originated, because that's a fascinating little story. And I'll try to bring a variety of different Bocks with me so that you can see what they're like. There's really only one solid Bock beer in the market right now, and that's Creamor's Orbach. Aventinus, which is from Schneider, is a double Bock, and it's, for the first time I've seen it, it's in a can, so it'll be interesting to try that. But that one's got a little bit more oomph to it because it's a little higher alcohol. I know that Holston makes a Festbock and maybe a Maybach as well. Yeah, that's a good question. Nut Brown Ale, a style or just a marketing thing? Yeah, Nut Brown is more because I don't know if it's marketing. So it's a brown ale. Brown ale is the style, and the nut part of it is more of a descriptor than anything else, because what they're doing, the malts that they're using are enhancing the nut characteristics. So the nuts are going to pop out a little bit more on those ones. So you're going to get a little bit more walnut, pecan, almond, probably a little bit of hazelnut in Black Oak's Nut Brown. Hazelnut is definitely a big part of that one. But it's not, I wouldn't say it's really a marketing thing. It's more just a descriptor to give you an idea of what kind of characteristics are in that beer to begin with. This is in my level 2 classes running at Steamwhistle right now. He's always got really good questions on the go. And let me just think about some other things that we can chit-chat about while you guys are asking your questions. Jeremy, I'm sure that you guys have a interesting experience with that hurricane that came by. So I know that Cape Breton's out there, and you guys are on that point in a beautiful, beautiful part of our country. Yeah, that's the Einbecker Urbach is skunky. That's a great question. The skunkiness permeate the entire beer, just the air in the beer bottle or can. Skunkiness is an aroma that permeates throughout the entire beer. However, once you pour it from the bottle into a glass, it dissipates rather quickly. So even though it is, because that beer comes in a green glass, it's going to be really, really skunky right off the bat, and then as it's in the glass, it's probably going to dissipate a little bit. Ur means original, so that's, Einbecker's talking about an Urbach, which means that it's from probably Einbeck, which is the originator of the Bock style. So I'll have to see if I can get that and try it. I'm going to reach to the back of the shelf and get it. Black Oak's got a definite nuttiness on the aroma and finish over Big Rock. Yeah, the nuttiness on the Big Rock Herald is a little bit more subtle. It comes in probably about 4 or 5 aromatics in behind what the lead is for me. So to me, the lead aromatic on Big Rock is really toffee, caramel, and brown bread, and then the nuts come in a little bit later. Black Oak, that's what it leads with, and I think that is the same thing for Amsterdam as well. So while I have, I know Jeremy's here, and if any of you are ever traveling when this whole shitstorm lifts, if any of you are ever traveling to the East Coast, I would strongly urge you to go to Cape Breton and go visit Big Spruce. They do they do a lot for the environment as well. So they have an organic farm there. They've got hops growing there. They have an interesting beer called Tag Urit, where they used to some of the proceeds of the beer went to tagging sharks or other aquatic animals. I'm not sure it's always sharks. But these guys are wonderful, wonderful brewers and people who really support the craft brewing industry, especially out in Nova Scotia. But we could do with getting a little bit of your beer here sometime, other than me just getting beer here. Where else can we go with this? Might have to see if we can talk about. I know there's Thus you asked about this in for Prud'homme, but you asked about doing a Baltic Porter. But I seem to think that I saw one recently in the LCBO, so I'll have to see if we can go find that one as well. Yeah, and other than that, I think Big Spear's allowed to ship if you place an order. That's a good question, Jeremy. I'm sure that you can answer that one. We'll let Jeremy pipe in shortly. And find out if we can, if Vest can get some beer shipped into Ontario. I know it's not illegal to ship it in. It depends on how much you order. A container load might be an issue because then you'd have to pay all the duties on it. Yeah, other interesting things. I found some interesting stuff out about our grocery channel recently, and that is because of the deal that was signed 4 or 5 years ago. Grocery stores, if you're buying your beer at grocery stores, they're making about a 2% margin. So any of the beer they're selling there, they're doing it more as a service than anything else. And I personally believe that grocery is going to be the way of the future, especially in Ontario. And so I'd like to see the handcuffs come off the grocery stores and allow them to merchandise and discuss beer with consumers a little bit more than they're able to. So hopefully I had a nice chat with Vice President at Loblaws about this whole thing, and that'll be a fun thing to see. But anyway, Harold says that you can get free shipping over 125 to all provinces. Harold must have been on the Big Spears website. So anyway, we've got level 2 classes, level 3 and level 4 classes happening that I'm teaching in person. I've got a couple level 1s starting, one at Black Lab in Toronto on Monday. That class is full. I've got one starting at All or Nothing in Oshawa, and we've got a few more class sessions coming up in October and late October and November, one in Hamilton, one in Toronto. Online's always still available. We're on YouTube, obviously you know that, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Tell your friends that we love having chats about beer and love talking to people about beer and investigating everything about beer. So hopefully you've enjoyed it. I want to thank you again for joining me. It is always a pleasure to host these, and I hope you've enjoyed your brown ales tonight. Cheers.